The game of Three Kingdoms is not a history lesson. It is a 100-hour tutorial on how to gaslight, gatekeep, and girlboss your way through ancient China. You play as one of several warlords with severe personality disorders and a dream of uniting China through honor and legends. Naturally, I ignored all of that to play as Yuan Shu. He's labeled as an ambitious powermonger, but in reality, he is just a trust fund kid with a god complex. Yuan Shu's entire campaign revolves around legitimacy. Most people earn respect through good deeds or military brilliance. Yuan Shu prefers to Clout-maxx. He spends his days sending you-up texts to neighboring warlords, demanding they acknowledge him as the rightful emperor, in exchange for not getting his goons to egg their palace. We begin in Nanyang, which I will assume will not tell you much, and we immediately remove our first roadblock. Unlike Warhammer, the enemies here don't just immediately fall over. They are actively persuaded into having their bodies bashed into the ground at an increasing velocity. With the first settlement taken, we can focus on the actual gameplay, a diplomacy system that isn't just a binary choice between peace and extinction. Yuan Shu has a special button for demanding legitimacy. By giving Sun Jian some old armor and a handful of pocket change, he will acknowledge us as the rightful emperor. Some will call this bribery. I call it government lobbying. Here is Yuan Shu, an ambitious, cruel, arrogant powermonger. Truly a nice guy. You'll notice I have several unique characters. That's a mod. Since Three Kingdoms' natural life support was pulled by CEA, I had to consort with the dark cards just to keep the pixels looking fresh. I added a new general. It is important that they have the thing called harmony, symbolized by a green checkmark. This is easy for now, but you'll soon find out that managing a Chinese court later becomes a bureaucratic mess that would even make the most resilient Amazon managers have a stroke. I proceeded to make Yuan Shu a cuck by leaving his wife and daughter in the hands of Zhang while he went on to his special chair to do emperor things. We moved to take the final province of Nanyang, which brings us to duels. Duels are the simplest way of frame-mogging an enemy general, by literally mogging them into the afterlife. Zhang has a unique portrait, so this objectively means that he is better, which he proves by cleaving the enemy in half. Looking at this, I'd feel very unsafe being a Chinese peasant. After taking the city, my first dilemma appeared. Sun Jian, the Chad who has recently sold his dignity for second-hand armor, was being attacked by a 48-year-old man. I could let him perish and be a big bitch about it, or I could help. I did not do this out of the kindness of my heart. I did it because Sun Jian had a son who is about to hit puberty. And I need an actual heir, and not this disappointment currently living in my palace. To prepare for war, I made trade agreements because I wasn't just poor, I was in an active state of bankruptcy. This was bad, as Liu Biao decided to engage in harmful violence against my generals and Yuan Shu's frail ego. The advisor predicts a Pyrrhic victory, which is a complete lie. This is a mini-siege, which in usual Total War fashion encourages shameless exploitation because the AI is void of any intelligence. The battle lasted until Yuan Shu's ego broke and he decided to duel a full health young man. You might think the campaign ends here, so did I. You'd be absolutely wrong. Liu Biao decided right before the final blow to simply give up, an interesting decision. He ran away and later died of natural causes, specifically having a sword shoved between his eyebrows. Before sieging Biao's city and incurring a small casualty of about 40 million, I approached Sun Jian with a lucrative deal. He gives me his heir, Sun Si, one of the best characters in the game, and in return, I will not squeeze the last 10 cents I'm trying to get out of his pockets. Thankfully, my current biological heir, Yuan Yao, is only 15 years old. This means he is absent from any form of sentience, devoid of any emotional capacity, and any presence. This makes it the perfect time to kick him to the curb and make Sun Si my new heir. What this effectively does is also solidifies the fact that the self-proclaimed alpha male Yuan Shu is actually a professional cuck. It is not a betrayal of his bloodline, it's just market-adjusted fatherhood. I quickly realized that Three Kingdoms, unlike Warhammer, is not a game about conquest. It's a game about subtle human exploitation. Your fellow man is essentially just a biological battery you plug into the economy and hope it lasts, unless they're a yellow turban. These subhuman radicals have dangerous fringe ideas like equality and human rights, so I had to innovate. Technology in this game comes in the form of a reform tree. You can unlock trade agreements, industrial income, or even the mandate of heaven. These reforms can also be used to unlock units, which is completely irrelevant as our only unit is Sun Si. In my planning, Sun Jian died to historical accuracy. I met this with great sorrow in the form form of a new title, of a second marquis.
That tastes like promotion!
I declared war with Heiji, took some settlements, and then fought a battle against starving peasants. The peasants saw some arrows and collectively decided that being a rice farmer was perhaps not the worst thing imaginable. During the chaos, Yuan Shu was busy fighting a generic general who, realizing that desperate times called for desperate measures, cast Avada Kedavra on my faction leader. Yuan Shu died immediately. It was very immersive. After the war, I decided to engage in some government-funded LinkedIn stalking by deploying Wu Angao to Cao Cao's court. In Three Kingdoms, spying is essentially sending a man into the den of wolves and then immediately forgetting that he exists. I haven't checked his reports in 3 years. For all I know, Wu is currently Cao Cao's regional manager, but as long as he's not on my payroll, he's a success. With the economy tighter than Yuan Shu's moral compass, I did what every trustworthy second marquis does. I waged war against the pacifists in the name of progress. Several million people died for the sake of my quarterly projections. But as they say, you can't make an omelette without systematically dismantling a civilization. I was eventually sieged by Li Biao, lacking any conventional military strategy or a functioning frontal lobe. I resorted to the ancient art of running away. My cavalry moved so sporadically that the AI suffered a fundamental existential crisis. A man named Tan Zhang stood next to my arrow towers and simply allowed himself to be perforated, presumably because being dead was more logical than trying to understand pathfinding. Suddenly, the emperor became an adult, activating the imperial intrigue mechanic. This means if the teenager with the fancy hat doesn't like your vibes, he can legally permit every pathological maniac in China to repossess your house. To counteract this, I spent a resource I don't understand in a way that I do. I recruited Ma Chao, a man who abandoned his own father, just to join my band of borderline schizophrenics. He is the only mentally stable person in this country, which by default makes him a biological freak of nature. I attempted diplomacy by consoling my son, who had a new purpose in his life. I used him to marry Dongbai, a greedy, energetic megalomaniac. I gave her the title of orator, which gave her a sense of purpose, and me 15 minutes of silence. The war with my brother Yuan Shao began. Yuan Shao is the living proof that family resemblance stops at competence. He sent his army into the meat grinder, and Sun Si, a man engineered solely to commit high-speed homicide, challenged his general to a duel. Eventually, through indiscriminate violence, I achieved the rank of Duke and rebranded my faction as the Duchy of Zong. It was a rebranding exercise that changed absolutely nothing, much like putting a live, laugh, love sign in a torture chamber. I then vassalized Yuan Shao, a man I was stabbing 40 seconds ago. Stability is a mindset. I then turned my attention to Gongsun Zan. This wasn't a war, it was a point collecting exercise. On my way to the throne, I paused my crimes against humanity only because my people were starving, a traditional Chinese pastime, so I engaged in aggressive diplomacy. I gave him back his burned cities, and in return, he gave me his soul. I also hired Shan Yu. This man has been sitting in my recruitment pool for about 30 turns. To put it simply, he is getting paid for the endeavor. With Gongsun Zan under new administrative rule, I turned my attention towards the south. Lady Wu was in the same coalition as me, so I left and gave her a proposition she could not refuse. This action forced everyone to consider a war with the ambitious powermonger that has been expanding far too aggressively. Everybody accepted this peace agreement except for a single man. Cao Cao, undeterred by my men standing suspiciously close to his borders, did not accept the new arrangements, and with all his forces in the south in a war with someone I don't care about, he could not stop the forces of progress. With a few prestige points away, and with the historical accurate casualties of 40 million per city, I had finally achieved my goal. After several years of aggressive taxation, strategic vassalization, and the forced labor of people who had no say in the matter, I had finally accumulated enough prestige points to do it. Yuan Shu declared himself to be emperor, the ultimate Clout-maxx, the final proof of legitimacy, the thing every neighboring warlord told him that he would never achieve and that he absolutely should never attempt. He had done it all. There was one small issue. Dong Min had also declared himself emperor. Cao Cao had also declared himself emperor. In a country of 3 self-appointed emperors, the title means approximately nothing. Yuan Shu had spent an entire campaign demanding recognition from people who refused to give it, finally seized it by force, and discovered that legitimacy available to anyone willing to ask loudly enough is not legitimacy at all, it's just branding. The turn timer was now 45 seconds, the late game was collapsing under its own mass, and somewhere in his palace, surrounded by a court that despises him, an heir he didn't biologically produce, and a wife he outsourced to another general, Yuan Shu sat with his emperor title and his branding problem. Was it worth it? He has a title, 3 people have that title, the turn timer is now 45 seconds, I'm going to go touch grass. That's it for this one, thanks for watching, bye.